they can feel better. They can feel better about themselves for passing this as they see, 100 people come out to support it of all different varieties of backgrounds. Um, so you'll see a lot about in national news and generally in the conversation that, community input tends to get monopolized by entrenched interests. And so we're here to sort of organize as our group to say that, we do want these changes. It's not just some cranky people worried about, parking on their street, but rather a larger swath of the community that is interested in home ownership opportunities for middle income people and for better land use decisions and policy in the city. So the first thing that you're
I was going to say, I'm going to share my screen now, Daniel, so we can walk through the document.
Please do. Yes. So, Felicity has worked very hard to prepare this, which is a basic outline of generally what your testimony could be look like. And so the three most important things that you need to say is, a greeting that includes your name. So say your name, your first and last name, the district that you live in, and that you support this item. If you say nothing else, that matters. And it really does matter. And for this hearing in particular, it's going to be a little bit less formal. It's this whole exercise is to gather community input. So if you're a body and you're at that podium and you say you support it, that alone matters. Then after you get through that, you can give your reasons for supporting it. And something to keep in mind is they are not asking the community to come testify on every single tenet of this policy or to explain to them the economic reasoning behind various land use policies, or don't be like a huge nerd about, triplexes that were successful in Houston or whatever. So tell your story. If there's one of those that you find particularly compelling for a reason, give that. Or if you are looking for a home and you notice that there was a duplex that you could afford, but it was not in a part of town that you wanted to live in, or there was a bidding war that happened to it. Yes, Roger, that's also good. So if your district, you can get a little bit more specific and say what neighborhood you're from. That's actually pretty critical as well. And then sandwich that, say thank you at the beginning and that you support it. And then at the end, say thank you again. And then you can say, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for your work on behalf of the people of Austin. And you're done. And be positive. I'm going to stress, be positive, say thank you, and yes, you support it.
Yeah, just to echo a couple of things that Daniel was speaking about there, is that sometimes when we do council resolutions, they're pretty technical. There's some details. In this particular case, literally, as Daniel said, the main thing we want to do here is positive support for the home initiative and for the ability to build more types of housing in Austin. And we're going to go through some different talking points in just a second. I did want to notice some other tips that we have just generally is obviously write down, if you can, what you're planning to say, because it does usually help with the nerves. Second of all, don't feel nervous if you are nervous. Like, that's super normal. As Zach just said, like, everybody gets nervous at that podium. It's scary. And it's going to be particularly strange because there's going to be like some ridiculous, there's 13 planning commissioners and 11 council members, or I guess 9, 10, because council member Harper Madison won't be with us, but it's going to be a full room when you walk up to talk to the people in front of the dais. So it's going to be a lot of people. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel stressed. It's totally normal. And it is just an opportunity for you to say you support these types of initiatives and that you want more housing options in Austin. So really positive, safe, straightforward, and sincere. We were saying, like, if you have a humorous story, that's great, but it doesn't have to be funny. Really, just as long as you're telling a story and what it relates to housing, that's awesome. And make sure to just mention either your neighborhood or your district and why you support it. And basically what we're going to go through now is just a couple of key talking points about home. And you'll see that this is a longer version. There's a shorter version on our website, which we'll post in a second here. But essentially, there's some general talking points about why home is good. There's some specifically related to affordability, some related more to transit, and then some additional ones related to sort of home, to environmental and equity issues. Obviously, there's a huge variety of reasons to support home. So what we're suggesting is exactly that, like pick the thing that speaks to you. Are you a transit rider and you want to have more housing options closer to transit? Great, talk about transportation. Are you someone that's really concerned about equity in our city? Then absolutely talk about that. Do you think that we need more affordable housing options? Talk about that. So that's why we came up with this very long list. Don't feel like you have to touch on all of them. Really pick the thing that seems to fit with your housing story. And that's, again, plan to come up there, give a little spiel about why you care about more housing and be positive, and then you're done. You're good. And if you can add in thank yous, that's even better. We're going to touch on these really quickly. I think generally speaking, Daniel, do you want to cover the general ones here?
Yeah, let me read these really quick just to make sure. Okay, so this is a critical housing reform. And basically it is home part 1 or home resolution happened in July, and it is going to increase density further out from the corridors. This is not about large projects. This is about a 3-plex replacing a single family home, or putting an ADU on your lot. And that, for that lot, that increases the density 3-fold. And this is not going to happen every lot. It is not incentivizing tear downs, but what it is allowing other options to exist. And, you know, there's even language in there about the Mueller development, which if you've been over there at like Manor and 51st to the Mueller development, it is fabulous. And there's all kinds of different housings living next to each other, and it's going really well and people really like it. And so it's, you know, proof of concept over there. What are the different kind of zoning things that are going to move to the rest of the city that could make it a lot better? And when you have 2 units on a lot, you are not having to buy a much larger piece of land, is the one of the biggest thoughts, although that's later. But you are joining in with another family or another person when you have multiple units on the same lot to purchase that land together, and you're purchasing a piece of that home together, and that just is a huge affordability benefit. And that is a major talking point, because a lot of people want to live in a smaller house or can only afford to live in a smaller house, and it's filling that gap between living in an apartment and living in a large, you know, detached home. So affordability is big. The environment is another large one. As we're increasing the density within the central Austin, that is going to be driving a lot of that you know, commute demand down, because if you live closer to where you work, you maybe don't even have to go on any of the highways to get to work. Maybe you can just go up South Lamar or Congress or First Street or whatever to get there. And so you're taking that 45-minute commute and maybe making that shorter in the aggregate for everybody. And so it's driving down that aggregate commute time, and also the aggregate vehicle miles traveled by just densifying the center of the city where businesses and amenities and jobs already are. Equity is the next big area, and that is about, yes, please, Stephen.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I apologize if I missed this, but I guess I'd just like to understand a little bit about the current status of these initiatives. My understanding is that they passed city council earlier this year, but what is this next hurdle, and what does it take to actually turn this into a passed ordinance?
Great question.
I'm happy to take that question.
Yes,
so this is a great question. Basically, essentially, sorry, I was just trying to change the permissions on that. So essentially, it did pass. That's what we call an initiation in the summer. And that was what council kicked off the home. And the home resolution actually had several different parts. So that's why we're calling this home phase 1, is because what we're doing now is just that first piece. So they split out some things and they put some things back together. So for example, another thing we're going to be hearing a lot about is occupancy limits. That was actually initiated separately, but it's going to be considered as part of this joint meeting on October 26th. So there's 3 main pieces. They're going to go through this review. There's going to be an additional meeting with Planning Commission that's happening, I believe, November 7th. And then the final meeting will be November 14th is the Planning Commission meeting. And then the final actual passage should happen on December 7th. So essentially this is 3 meetings in a row. This meeting, the conversation we're having about now is for the public comment on 10/26, which is this Thursday. And that's a joint meeting between Planning Commission and the City Council. The next meeting will be just Planning Commission, where we'll actually review it, and we'll probably get a little bit more on the weeds just because that's sort of our job as planning commissioners. And then the final meeting will actually be at City Council. And in theory, they've heard lots of feedback. We've made some tweaks maybe, and then they have a final discussion and it gets passed. Then it literally goes into law. So in theory, we'll have this all passed and finalized before Christmas, which would be basically the 26th, 25th of December. It's 10 days from when it finally passes at City Council to when it actually becomes law on the books. So essentially, the idea is to get all of this through the last phases in kind of the next 6 to 8 weeks. Does that help answer your question?
That does. And then I guess the only other piece that I'm missing is, I know we've had legal challenges to past reforms that have passed City Council. Does going through this process of public comment avoid that in the future with the community and not commodity challenges?
Yes, that's 100% accurate. I didn't want to get too much into it, but yes, for those of you who don't know, there have been several lawsuits related to basically land development changes here in Austin. And that's because people have said that they weren't properly notified, or they weren't given a chance to comment, that they were all these things basically that they have used as a legal basis to challenge some of the changes we've made to allow more housing in Austin. This is what we would call the belt and suspenders approach. So they're trying to be super careful, which is why everybody got a notification. You may have gotten a little purple flyer. That may be why you're here. And that's why they're also having these series of meetings, because essentially it gives us a chance to say very clearly to the community, you were notified, you were given the opportunity to give feedback, you had the chance to speak, and then now we're going to go ahead and move forward. And I think to Daniel's point, there is widespread support for these changes, but we really need to show up as a community so that they're not just hearing sort of voices that are against these changes, or things like, oh, we're going to sue you, things like that. Like, council wants to feel positive about making these changes in our land development code. And this is an opportunity for us to really show up and do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Just to put some more, like, just to put add a little bit of clarity. Every time you make a land use change, you do a resolution, which, staffers, city council staffers, right? Or the council member will write it, their staff will write it, or advocates will write it, and then that goes through. And any of us can write a resolution, bring it to a council member and say, please pass it. You need some expertise and to make sure you know what you're doing. But then they hand it off to city staff, who makes it into the language of city code. And that it needs to go through a vetting process between planners and city legal to make sure that it looks the way legal city code will, and that it can, hopefully withstand any sort of legal challenges. So that's sort of the idea between the split process. Okay, and I did see a question earlier. Yes, minimum lot size is happening in January, but and all of this as in home part 1, 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
Okay, equity talking points.
Yeah.
This I would say is just about, there are certain neighborhoods in Austin. Think about Clarksville or Terrytown or Zilker, where the current minimum lot size is 5,750 square feet and you can only build one house on it. That is exclusionary zoning. That is textbook exclusionary zoning, because that means you are forced to purchase a very expensive piece of land, and that only one entity is allowed to live there and not have anyone help you purchase that together. Density allows multiple people to outbid for a piece of land. And so this would open up those high opportunity, highly desirable areas to housing types that are more affordable, including ADUs and duplexes and threeplexes. This is a very big step in the right direction to opening up our high opportunity, formerly exclusionary neighborhoods to more different types of people and various different kinds of people earning at different incomes. All right.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on this last one because I think this is really important. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to what's been written. Maybe you've got a neighborhood newsletter or heard some things from folks who are against these proposals. Part of the reason we put these fact-checked items in here is because we did want to make it clear that you're going to hear a lot of things that are pretty inaccurate about home when the testimony starts on Thursday. And what it does. And that's why we just want to make it clear, this is not necessarily something you have to say, but if you feel like you want to include this as part of your testimony, feel free, because, you know, part of what we're also doing here is making it clear that we're not ending single family zoning in Austin. You know, we're not undermining SOS, like the watershed ordinances. We're not trying to destroy our environmental rules or kill trees or anything else. So part of the reason this is in here is factual for you all to understand, but also just so that we're clear that these things are not what's happening with home. What we're literally doing is exactly what Daniel said, is making it more permissible to build different types of housing and for different configurations of people to live together. So for example, you can add a tiny house. That's one of the new things. You can have new occupancy limits, so we can do more co-ops and co-housing. So this is just building a lot of flexibility into our land development code, which just doesn't currently exist. It is not going to do all of the terrible things that you might hear, which is also something that we'll be hearing on Thursday, is a lot of negative commentary about how awful this is. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to emphasize to people to be positive, because we see this as a real opportunity to grow our city in a really sustainable and sort of more positive and equitable way. That's probably not what you're going to hear from the people who are against it. So keeping our testimony positive and sort of really pointing out that none of the things, the sky falling things are happening is also great, because that's helps us feel like we're the folks on the good side here and trying to make a positive change for Austin.
Yeah. And I really want to emphasize the environmental part of this, is that this is good for the environment. And a lot of the talking points that you're going to hear are going to say it's not, and they are wrong. This is an anti-sprawl policy. If you're talking about chopping down trees, you know, that's not true. Heritage trees have protections in the city of Austin. What doesn't are massive sprawl developments on the edges of the city. Yep. Those are hundreds of trees getting chopped down. So the tree thing is wrong. It is anti-sprawl policy. So it's, you know, again, I'm going to say it again, helping people get out of their cars onto transit, supporting our bus and bike and soon to be light rail network. And impervious cover does not change in this ordinance. We are not increasing flood risk at all. We are keeping our current impervious cover requirements in the code, and that's a good thing. And if those impervious cover requirements get touched, it'll be holistically in a way in which watershed is involved, and we are helping and not hurting our ability to withstand floods in Austin. So you're going to hear those three. I know we're going to hear those three negative talking points, and they are not true. This is good for the environment. Okay. And then
I'm going to go ahead. Yes, I was going to say, we've talked enough, so I'm going to turn off the screen sharing. And if folks have questions, it sounds like there's some conversation going on in the chat. And this is kind of a chance to sort of jump in and ask any questions or clarifications. We're really happy to help make any additional information you all might need. Anything we can answer? Go ahead, Zach.
I had one other thing that I thought was important to add, was an emphasis on being kind. So like, not just while you're speaking, but we're going to be, unlike most council sessions that are very dry, we're going to be into the environment where there's going to be a large number of people in City Hall. And like, from what I've seen in past ones, and we'll see how this one looks, like there's likely to be old, angry homeowners who are going to be, you know, rude, maybe talking to you personally, or going to try and boo you while you talk. And it's important that you do not react in kind. You know, your audience is not just the person you're talking to, but it's city council, it's everyone else watching. You know, if you let the other side make an ass of themselves, I'm sorry for, I'm not supposed to cuss, I don't know. But if you, yeah, you let them be an ass, and you've gone along and you respond kindly and met in good spirits and in good faith, you have just won over the rest of the audience. The other people that are looking that have not picked a side now see you as a reasonable person, and them as the old grumpy mean-spirited person, and that goes a long way towards winning people over, winning hearts and minds on council and just in the general audience.
I see a quick question here. Thank you for that, Zach. I think that's really important. And yes, there's probably going to be heckling and booing. I know Mayor Watson likes a nice orderly meeting. So if we can keep our side looking like the good guys again, that's really helpful. And I did see a question regarding impervious cover and whether those changes, there is some talk about potentially having that in phase 2 or some additional changes, maybe to setbacks and things like that. That is not in this phase. And I think that is good to emphasize because they sort of want to see how the conversation goes and what the feedback looks like. In theory, we can do a lot of change with just what's happening in home phase 1, but there is home phase 2, and that's sort of really the key to unlocking, I think, even more changes. So we're hoping that this passes and it's very positive, and that then we'll get phase 2, which is things like subdividing lots and a lot of other minimum lot size, some other things that are kind of really exciting and probably that next level. But honestly, that's why we need everybody to show up on Thursday and for these next couple of meetings, because we won't have home phase 2 if we're not successful with this first home phase, just to put it out there, honestly. A couple other things I was just going to mention logistically as we're sort of at that phase. The meeting is scheduled to start at 2 o'clock. There will be a presentation from staff. So they'll have opening remarks. There'll be a presentation from staff. We don't expect them to start calling speakers until probably 2:30 or 2:45 at the earliest. There will likely have, so the virtual speakers will likely go first. So if you choose to come to speak virtually, you'll probably be towards the beginning of the speaking, and then they'll start taking in-person speaking. Zach is going to explain some additional logistics to you, but just so you all know that that's sort of what we're expecting for Thursday. And normally, just for those of you who maybe gone through one of our training before, we suggest like saying like good morning or good afternoon, Mayor, and there's going to be so many people up there. There's no need to include a greeting at all. Really, if you just say your name and what district or neighborhood you live in, that's fine. There's a lot of people sitting there. So you would take up almost all of your speaking time if you tried to say hello to everybody. And I do want to say, as we talked about being kind and thoughtful, as well as positive, and if you do have a fun story or something, I don't know, like a Halloween costume, or you want to bring your kids, or you have a drawing, like, don't forget, there's probably going to be about 7 to 8 hours of testimony, quite honestly. So breaking it up a little bit or being a little bit memorable is actually awesome, because we're going to be sitting there for a long time. So if you do have something creative or want to include a creative item please do, because I think that will help in terms of making it an impact and a sort of making a lasting impression. Any other questions I can answer?
Felicity, would you
Yes.
prefer us to be in person over virtually? Do you think that that's a bigger representation?
I do think that coming in person is great. And normally we would 1,000% say yes, because particularly at a council meeting, maybe you only have 10 to 15 speakers. So of course, every person that comes and speaks in front of the council is a big deal. I will say in this particular situation, it's a lot of speakers, and we understand that this is a huge commitment to ask people to come down to City Hall and like park their car and wait to be called and everything else. We're going to try and make it as fun as possible. So if you can come in person, please do. Like that, it does make a big impact. But I also want people to understand virtual testimony is great, and we appreciate anybody who can take the time to call in, because that is making a difference. Even just spending that 5 seconds on a phone call, is impactful. So don't feel like if you can't come in person, you shouldn't do anything at all. That's not the case. We're always happy to have you whichever way you can come.
Just one other thing, Felicity, that I want to say is that I found a lot very helpful when it comes to going to City Hall is that they validate your parking. So you don't have to worry about finding parking and paying for like God knows how long you're going to be parked.
Yes, they will validate parking. And we expect that it will be pretty busy, but there's usually parking spots at City Hall. And of course you can use Cap Metro, and hopefully there'll be lots of bikes there and we can all have a little bike picture as well, you know, all that kind of fun stuff, right? I think Felix has his hand up.
Yeah, hi. So, what's the time commitment look like for this? I don't know if you already spoke about that. I was, you know, I was dealing with some stuff while I was listening in. I don't know if I missed that.
Can I take this?
Go ahead, Zach.
Yes.
So the speaking is going to start at 2 p.m. And go till however long it's finished, and they're going to start with online speakers. And so it's hard to say exactly. It could go on a very long time, but myself as well as other people are going to be there, and we have a list of people that have signed up through various means through the form. If you haven't, you should put in the chat like, hey, I'm going to be here. We are going to be looking for people that have said that they're going to be here, and I'm going to have a public spreadsheet that's going to have the list of all the names in order, and I'm going to try and share a public spreadsheet that has, okay, here's where you are in order and here's where we're currently at. I'm going to try my best. It's hard for me to promise, but I'm trying my very best to, between us and a couple other volunteers, to be messaging people individually. We have your contact info. If you know, within like, if you're going to speak in the next hour or so. So I'm doing everything. I'm going to be doing everything I can to reduce that time scale. I don't want people to feel like they have to spend 10 hours at City Hall. I'm going to be spending 10 hours at City Hall. Some other people are going to spend 10 hours at City Hall, but you should not have to spend 10 hours at City Hall. I hope that you don't have to spend more than an hour, and I'm doing my best to facilitate that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end when I talk about all that we're going to do day of. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was just asking to have like a bit of a reasonable expectation of like what time maybe I should be there and how long because I could maybe be there for like 2 or 3 hours. I don't know that I can commit more to that, more than that.
Yeah, and you should not have to. We're going to be able to publish, like, before the speaking begins, the sort of lists of and in what order. And so, you know, you can kind of guesstimate, like, let's say 3 minutes per speaker, 2 minutes to talk, and then 1 minute in transition, and you can kind of guess from that. But I'm going to have a public spreadsheet that I'm going to be sharing with everyone that'll be slowly updating, like, okay, this is where we're at, and, you know, maybe with a timestamp, and so you can kind of tell from that the trajectory of where we're heading. And so that should make it so that you don't have to spend more than an hour or maybe 2 at City Hall, but much less than the full time period that people are going to be speaking.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think it's been covered in the chat, but just so you all know, the later you sign up, the further down you are in the queue. So if you really are like a night owl and want to come hang out at, like, I don't know, 8 o'clock at City Hall, you can sign up day of until 1:15, and you'll be like literally at the very end of the speakers. So, you know, that's the thing too, is if you know that you would rather speak later in the evening, maybe you're free after 9 o'clock or something, definitely just wait to sign up until like a little bit later in the process. We are expecting, a lot of folks have been waiting for the sign up to open. So there are a lot of speakers already signed up, but we're hoping that, you know, the closing speakers will all be pretty pro housing, because that will be a great way to sort of end the evening. So that's what we're aiming for. So any of our late night owls, come hang out. We'll be there listening to testimony.
And if this is not possible for you, I mean, yes, on the one hand, please come and speak at City Hall, please. It's very important. But also, if there's no way you can make it, send an email to everybody on council or your council member with this same information. And that really also does matter. And you should do both if you can.
Yes, I just dropped it in the chat. We had posted it earlier, but we do have an email letter campaign writing. And I think Ryan is just about to walk us through the speaker sign up. So you'll see there's actually also an option to indicate support and not speak. That's also a great thing to do, because that way people know that you do support the item. You just can't make it on Thursday, which is completely understandable given the situation. And there will be 2 more meetings. So we really do want everybody to come out for 10/26 this Thursday, but say you have a more availability on a Tuesday night, you can come see me at Planning Commission. It's great. So yeah, there's going to be multiple chances to have, to give testimony, public comment on this. All right. Any other questions?
Felicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom, so I apologize for that. So you guys might have answered this already, but like, how optimistic are you about this going through? Do you think that the NIMBYs are going to make it almost 50-50, or like we're like kind of like on the side of probably not going to pass or something like that?
We're pretty confident. I'm confident that this is likely to pass. It passed 9-2, the resolution did.
Okay.
So, you know, in preliminary vote counting, it looks promising. And even on planning commission, I think that is also a promising place. So yes, and Councilmember Poole is working very hard to continue to have her whip her votes and to do all of the excruciating early steps to make sure that this does not blow up. So I think we are pretty confident.
I would also like to say it's not so. I think so. The resolutions for all these things passed 9-2. And I think that these resolutions themselves are important, are likely to pass. But the reason that this event in particular, and we're trying so hard to get people out, it's not just, it's about these resolutions, and these resolutions are important and great. It's not just about these resolutions. It is about in the last the city council came out of the elections were largely about housing. And so people got really pumped on housing, excited to do stuff on housing. They passed a great slate of resolutions, but nothing's actually become law yet. And now that things are about to become law, the opposition is ramping up, and we do not want to lose momentum. We want city council to be excited for all the amazing resolutions that they pass. We want them to do more. We want the resolutions that they pass to go fully into law. So this is not only about these resolutions, but keeping up the excitement, the momentum for all the other city council, for everything else that we have in the pipeline, and for everything else to come.
I have one question. I was wondering how bills like this get put on the agenda. I know you said it comes from a resolution and that anyone can write it, but how do you actually write a serious resolution? I think, let me just say, like, I think this is one of the most important and most influential things that can shape the city of Austin. And I'm a huge pro transit, pro walkability guy, and I'm also a developer. And so one thing that I just want to know in the future is how can we pass more resolutions that lessen the dependency on cars?
So what this is called an IFC, or an item from council. There's a bunch of things that happen on the agenda that come from staff, and this is just them needing to approve, to like sign off on contracts with various people to build like sidewalks or whatever, or to, you know, they asked for something a long time ago and it comes up, and those sort of come up automatically on the agenda. An item from council is something that they have submitted, like I think it's like, I don't know the date, 2 weeks before the meeting. And so an item from council is a resolution that council member is bringing forward, and usually they have some co-sponsors. They usually form a sub-quorum, that's 5 people, to put, you know, together to bring this to council and, you know, pass it. So the council members could just sponsor a resolution and bring it in, and that's what happens.
I would love to talk more about this, but I also want to like get through the specific things that we're trying to get through in the agenda. And I would love to stay for the end.
We're happy. I am going to be a little facetious here, and also, but also please consider joining Aura. We've had a huge impact this year. Part of the reason we're doing so much land development work is because of the work we did with elections last year. That's why I'm on planning commission now. I'm specifically got picked because I'm trying to bring a voice to a lot of the things we're talking about tonight. So, you know, our work is making a huge impact. So if you've enjoyed this training or want to be more involved with getting additional changes, please consider joining us officially. You're also always welcome to come to any of our events. Before I get any more into why you should join Aura, I'm going to let Ryan speak. I'm going to turn my screen sharing back on because we're going to walk through the steps of actually signing up for council testimony. And one thing I did also want to mention, I saw a question in here about the difference between this and the December 7th meeting. And we can talk about that after we do this sign up really fast for everybody who's interested to learn how to sign up. So Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself while I get ready?
Hi, I'm Ryan Pizicki. I'm the treasurer of Aura. Recently joined the board. And so I have been the boomer millennial who's been chosen, I guess, to walk y'all through this process. It's a pretty painless, just a few clicks on the City Hall website. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now if you haven't signed up already.
Now is the time for everyone to click the link and follow along.
Yeah. Well, when you click the link, it will actually take you to a different page that then has a link that goes to here. Can we go back to that? I'm not driving the car here. This is like backseat driving. You just, yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Why don't you go? This is where you'll end up. Just you can take it from here, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fine. All right. So you get here, you click next. All right. So this is all that's on the docket here. You're going to click the little radio button down there next to October 26th, and then click next again. And then there's only one item on the agenda for this hearing, and that is item number 1. And very crucial here, we are for this. So we're going to click for and then click next again. Do you wish to speak? I hope so. Click yes. And then here you have the option to decide whether or not you will do it in person or remotely. So click in person here, hit next again. And then fill out your name, first, last, telephone number. You can spell it incorrectly. They'll probably pronounce it incorrectly or not at all, as in my case last time I spoke. Put in your email address and then select your district. So if anybody has the Find Your District link handy, could you drop it in the chat, please? But your district is based on where you live. And so if you don't require interpretation services, no, here, theme, you can just say you're speaking in favor of item 1. You don't need to elaborate this here. They know what it is. And that's it. Submit. You'll get an email from the city confirming your sign up, and then you'll be on the list. Any questions?
Quick question. So let's say they call our names and we are not in the vicinity at that moment. Is that you snooze, you lose, or will they give you another chance?
Yeah, so they'll go on to the next person, but you can go to the clerk and tell them that you're there now, and then they'll put you back into the rotation.
And we can probably say that for you if we're in contact. I think they'll probably let us, and you'll get pushed to the back of the line. So you might end up being able to speak, but it'll be pretty late.
I have a question. Do they prioritize remote versus in person, or are those treated equally?
They start with remote.
Okay. And does it matter what district you're in? Like, how are people organized? Is it first come, first serve based on your registration?
Yes. Yeah. Starting with remote, but if you're in person, then it's then you're speaking as you signed up in line.
If I wanted to change the status of, like, let's say I signed up to do it online, but then I want to do it in person, can I still do that, or is that fixed?
Yes, when you'll get an email from the clerk's office showing that you're signed up to speak, and you can email them and say, I need to change to virtual, or I need to, basically there's a contact email in the email that you can use if you need to adjust your adjust what you've signed up for in some way. And also, if you are coming in person and you have an issue with your sign up, you can go and speak to the clerk's office. Essentially, when you walk into the chambers, there's some folks over in the corner who look very official. That's where the clerk sits. She's the one who controls the calls of the name. She's working off the list that Zach is going to have the same copy of. And essentially, she's there to manage the speakers. So if you have an issue with your speaking slot or have a problem that comes up, you can just ask politely, hi, I was supposed to be here, or I can't speak in person, I need to switch to virtual, like whatever it is, they're there to help you basically.
Something else that I think hasn't been said yet is that, so the link that we've posted in the chat, you can sign up to speak until, when does that close? It closes Wednesday?
1 o'clock. It's going to be basically 1 o'clock on Thursday is the last time they're going to take speakers.
But I think, so
oh, sorry, the virtual, sorry, I said that wrong. The virtual link is gonna turn off, I believe on Wednesday. Is that correct, Zach?
Wednesday evening.
Wednesday evening, yes. So
not-
sorry, the link we just went through will work until Wednesday evening.
But if you wake up Thursday morning and you find out like, actually I have the day off, actually I really want to speak, I'm excited about this, you can go to City Hall and there will be kiosks at City Hall where you can sign up to speak. And those kiosks will let you sign up until 1 p.m., 1:15. And so you can sign up day of, but you can't sign up online. You have to go on to City Hall in person. And we will be there and we will show you how to do that if you do come.
And just for everybody who's signing up right now, yay, thank you so much. But just to let you know, Zach and Ryan, as well as some of the other Aura board members, will be on site all day. As mentioned, there's free parking. So basically you can come to the city parking garage, get parked. If you come up into the lobby, you should see them as well as the signs and whatnot for Aura. We're hopefully gonna have some fun activities to keep you busy. There are places to eat and drink near City Hall, some of which are quite lovely. And hopefully it'll actually be fun. You can sit in the council chambers and listen to the testimony. You can sit outside and sort of hang out and greet and talk to people. You know, it is going to be a couple of hours, obviously long, but we are hoping that it'll be a fun event and people will have a good time chatting and talking about things. There should be some fireworks, I'm sure, here and there, so might be worthwhile. And of course, if you aren't coming downtown or you want to follow along virtually, it will be available on the City Austin website, so you can also follow and see the speakers there as well. So plenty of ways to track the action on Thursday. Oh, yes, and please take Cat Metro and or ride your bike instead of bringing your car to City Hall. Thank you.
Any more questions before I go on to, I'm going to talk about what we're doing on City Hall, at City Hall, because I'll be there.
Yeah, to answer your question, Kelly, so it's a little unclear how they'll deal with virtual folks who come in later. They may do a second round of virtual, is what our thinking is, that if some people miss their virtual, sometimes they do that, is that people will call in later and then they'll end up doing another round of virtual speakers, if that answers your question.
Zach, I signed up earlier today and haven't received a confirmation email yet. Is that something that comes later?
So when I signed up, I received mine immediately. So that does strike me as somewhat odd. I don't know if anyone else had experience of receiving one a couple hours later. Maybe
I've almost always gotten it immediately.
Okay.
If you didn't receive one, I would sign up again. I don't quite know why that would be.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no more questions. I'm going to talk about what we're doing, what our game plan is day of. So myself and I believe a couple other people are taking the day off work and are going to be there at City Hall all day long. So if you wake up in the morning and decide, actually, I do want to speak, you can go to City Hall and we will show you the instructions to use. We are going to have tables set up and we're going to have some activities. I know that Felicity has a couple Lego sets we're going to be building homes on. We might have some coloring books where we're figuring it out still, but we are going to be there all day. So in addition to just being there as a presence to greet you and to make sure you know where you're going and what you're doing, I am going to be following along with how council is going and trying to make sure everyone knows where they are in line. So we're going to have all the in-person speakers, at least, we are going to have published the day of the list of where you're at in line. So I'm going to put that in a public spreadsheet and I'm going to make that available to everyone. And then throughout the day, as people speak, I'm going to be trying to update that spreadsheet to say, you know, this person spoke at this time and highlight them or something to indicate that this is where we are in line. And so you can use that directory to kind of tell, this is how fast it's going. This is when I should be. In addition, if you signed your name through one of the forms, I'm going to do and we have your contact information through some method. I'm going to do my best to either text or email you and say, you know, when there's about an hour before you're supposed to speak that, hey, you're supposed to come up to City Hall. If you want to make sure that happens, I would text, I'll put my number in the chat. If you really make sure that happens, you should text me. I should hopefully, if you signed up the other way, hopefully I'll do it because I have your number. But if you text me and say like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm putting in the chat right now. I will be looking for you. Text me your name, your full name, and I will message you when your name's coming up. And if you give me like, hey, you know, Zach, my name is this and I need this much heads up, I will do whatever I can to make sure that's possible. There's going to be a couple of us there. So we're going to be managing a couple of things. We're going to be trying to pay attention to how the speakers are going. We're going to be greeting people as they come in. So hopefully we'll be able to do everything, do all of that. So I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for people. I don't want anyone else besides me to spend 10 hours at City Hall. But yeah, so there should be a group of us. If you have, I'm gonna have some housing signs. You can bring those to council chambers if you want to. If you have your own housing sign, that'd be nice. Anything else that I forgot to mention is gonna be going on day of?
I think folks were wondering when's the best time to text you, Zach?
Oh, text. Well, text me day of is probably better, but if you're only gonna remember right now, you can text me right now. But text me day of would be better for me. Any other questions or things I should mention?
All right, you guys seem to have lots of good input in the. I just put a couple of links in the chat so that you all have access. And if there's I think, does someone have a link to the Discord? Because obviously we have lots of resources in our Discord about how to talk about home and, you know, sort of generally talking about Austin urbanist stuff, which is a lot of fun. We really do appreciate you coming to this training and spending an hour with us so you can figure out what you want to say and how to talk about this stuff. And for those of you who can't be there on Thursday, don't worry. If you can take the time to email or at least fill out the registration link to indicate your support, that's awesome. And hopefully you will be able to join us, you know, one of the other meetings. I'm really excited to hear what everybody has to say on Thursday. I know it seems like a long meeting and a lot of work, but I'm actually excited to hear lots of pro-housing voices, and I'll be there, sitting there cheering you on. So if you're looking for someone to smile at you or make it a little less nerve-wracking, feel free to look at me. But generally speaking, we're here to hopefully make this a really positive experience and encourage our council to be excited about making these changes to our land development code. So any other questions we can answer? Zach?
I have a quick question. I'm just wondering, logistically, will there be a timer where we can see how much time is remaining? Is there a buzzer at the end? Do they immediately
buzzer?
It's not exactly like a buzzer. It's just, I don't know how to describe the sound. It's quite a weird sound. It's not like threatening though. Like a buzzer seems a little like scary. But there's like a electronic sound that lets you know that your time is technically up, and they're not gonna like push you off stage, but that's when like, okay, I need to wrap up in the next 10 seconds, or I'll start getting nasty looks.
Okay, great.
Felicity or Zach, question is like, who are the two people that were on council that didn't vote to approve the?
Mackenzie Kelly and Allison Alter were, if I'm not mistaken, were the two votes against as resolutions.
And in case you all don't know, Allison Alter represents District 10, which is basically the wealthier West Austin side of town. And then Mackenzie Kelly is our, in theory, Republican on the city council. She represents Northwest Austin and part of Williamson County. So she's sort of the very tip of Austin proper. We are hopeful that we could actually potentially have Mackenzie Kelly join us. So if you live in that area or have something specifically that you think would appeal to her to say, that would be great too.
An individual email from any constituents in District 6, right, for Mackenzie Kelly? In District 6 to Mackenzie Kelly specifically actually would go a much longer way than any other council district and would be very much appreciated.
Do we know what her logic against the initiatives are? Because I would feel like the conservative argument would be that, you know, this is a free market reform that allows the market to address Austin's housing affordability crisis, and why would she not support that if her perspective is more from the right?
If you live in District 6, you should totally send an email to affect.
I don't, unfortunately.
But I mean, I think, Stephen, I think you should say that if you're gonna come and speak, you should say that, and maybe just, you know, a little nudge will help her open her eyes that you have these principles, live up to it.
Fair enough.
All right, well, perfect timing. It's just about 8 o'clock. So thank you so much for spending time with us. And we hope to see you all out on Thursday. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, email, Discord, anything else. And thanks so much for spending time with us and going through this training. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know a couple of y'all had questions that we said, let's move on and get it addressed at the end. If whoever, I forget who that was, but if you want to stay on, I'm happy to chat with you. You asking more minutia about questions about resolutions and things. Otherwise, bye y'all.
Excellent. I think that went great. I'm gonna hop off now.
Yeah, bye Felicity. Sorry I got your name and title wrong at the beginning of everything.
Oh, I think that's,
Maybe that was the person I wanted to talk.
yeah.
I'm happy to take it if you want to get off. There's Tim. A second, we got someone else coming. Howdy, Kelly. Was there something you wanted? No, he left. Okay, never mind. I'm leaving.